So we go on to the abstract. The purpose of this study is to understand how aging affects income inequality. Because we know aging is gonna get worse over time, and there will be serious consequences on income inequality. So this study is has become necessary. Since with time series analysis is lacking in the literature, this paper uses the ARDL, autoregressive distributed lag method, to understand how aging and inequality is linked in the long run. The study examines how we can use savings to moderate inequality. We can also understand how savings can be a potential tool for income inequality reduction or stabilization.
Talking about. So, a simple definition of aging is on the screen now: a disproportionate increase in the elderly, a progressive demographic change that increases the number of older persons, meaning persons of the age of 65 years and above, disproportionately within a population. So, when we think about this, we ask the question, how does this occur? What are the causes of aging? Aging is progressive and occurs over time. The first cause is that fertility rate declines. This is because less children are dying due to better health care, and women are having better access to employment opportunities. Eventually, there are not enough children being born to offset the population that has now largely gone into retirement. The combination of low fertility in conjunction with the improvements in life expectancy and falling mortality owed to better healthcare access and living standards enjoyed by the elderly allows the older population to live well past retirement, causing the aging dilemma. Aging may become unsustainable for the population because the elderly will require healthcare access and medical services that may be costly. Then there's the issue of people retiring rather than working, reducing the labor supply, reducing economic output, and also reducing growth. Aging further strains the government expenditure because the falling tax collections due to the decline in the working population and a simultaneous increase in the public pension payout to the elderly.
So, a definition of income inequality will be the differences in income and the unevenness of its distribution among population. So, difference in income can be occurred few due to few factors: unfair hiring, unfair promotion, pay practices in some industries, and differences in occupational opportunity. All right. So, how to measure the income inequality? So, okay, first one will be Gini coefficient. We call it as a Gini index or Gini ratio. So Gini coefficient is a concept of income shares of groups or households. So it measure the distribution of income across a population. Okay, the second one will be Third entropy index. We call it as a Third index. Measure the economic inequality and racial segregation. The third one will be relative mean deviation.
So what the life cycle hypothesis suggests is that individuals start out with little to no income at a young age. At this point, we know they rely on their parents or take loans to finance their livelihood or their education. This is seen in region A right here, where they mostly spend more than they earn, if any. Then they grow into their working age. This is region B, where they earn more stable income and therefore they are able to save some of that income, which is the saving phase of their life cycle. Finally, as they retire, which is shown by this red line separating region C, individuals begin spending down their working age savings to maintain their consumption because they're no longer working, and therefore they earn typically a pension. What is the implication of the life cycle hypothesis on aging and inequality relationship? So the life cycle theory suggests that holding all else constant, the country that is experiencing aging population will likely face greater aggregate income inequality because we know if we consider two people in the population, their accumulation rate of wealth over time will be different. Now, when we generalize it across the entire population, we see that income inequality across all the individuals will be different, And therefore, as people age, income inequality also increases.
So that leads us to consider two problem statements in our study. The first is, what is the implication for Asian economies that are aging faster than they are getting richer? The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific reports that the aging window for developing Asian Pacific countries has become much shorter in comparison to other more developed countries. Secondly, we want to consider the question, can aggregate savings help reduce income inequality? Shaik has some interesting studies about this question, and he has suggested that there are some moderating effects between inflation and the unemployment rate. And he also argues that increasing savings over the course of a person's lifetime can help mitigate income inequality. Finally, we want to share the objectives of our study. And we have three objectives. The first being to verify the validity of the life cycle hypothesis in the context of aging populations using an empirical time series model. The second objective is to examine aging inequality relation for Asian Pacific countries based on the ARDL methodology. And lastly, to identify whether savings can be a potential channel to reduce or stabilize income inequality.
Before we proceed with the ARDL method, we begin by doing the unit root testing. The typical unit root tests that are used are augmented Dickey-Fuller ADF and the Phillips-Perron the PP test. So we utilize a series of diagnostic tests to ensure the model is free from structural break in the data. Then we test the residual for non-normality, and then serial correlation and heteroscedasticity. Lastly, we also do a specification error test using the Ramsey reset test. The final step is to proceed with the bounds testing for co-integration. It tests for the presence of long-run relationship between variables that we are testing. The test checks if the F statistic is above the upper bound critical value. Then we know that there is evidence of co-integration.